now are very different from what we had growing up. And I'll give you the example that was going through my mind right before this call. I'm just going to make sure that this is good. Okay. Um, let me pause one thing here. Give me a second. Okay. So what happens now is that I was I was about to come on the call and something occurred to me. You know, sometimes you have a plan. Maybe your plan is to travel somewhere. Maybe your plan is to take care of a certain situation. And then you realize, wait a second, this plan I had is being affected by other factors that have been brought into the equation. I need to rethink my plan. I think the school year of 2025 needed a different game plan before it started. But we went ahead and started it because we are supposed to start it. But here's the problem. There are now AI tools that can write papers for students in such a way that we don't know if the student wrote the paper or if AI wrote the paper. And there are some students that will not even like they won't even pretend. They will use AI to do things they shouldn't do. And or they would use AI outside the scope that we might recommend that they use it in. The problem with this is that teachers cannot be running everywhere trying to figure out who used AI for what all day. That is too much work. What we need to do instead, though, is did we help students change their mindset about how they should engage with knowledge and education? We didn't do that globally. Well, we might have done it in little pockets here and there, but here's why I'm saying this, because I want to rewind and talk about a different time where something happened and we didn't talk about it enough with students, and we're still reaping the challenges, or we're still going through the challenges around this. And what am I referring to? I'm referring to social media. I'm referring to smartphones. When smartphones and social media came, did we go around and tell students, here is what you need to do, here is how you need to navigate this and that? We didn't do that. We just gave them the smartphones. Right? We just gave them the smartphones. And now we are reaping the reward of look at what is happening to students who are not, they're not applying themselves to understanding how to use the smartphones appropriately. Now we've given them another tool called AI. And have they come to understand the full implications of the things that they're using? This is a serious concern. And my recommendation is that we call an assembly. I remember in boarding school, we used to have assemblies. The assembly is when you all gather and then the dorm prefect or the whoever is in charge for the day will tell you what you need to be working on. We need to call an assembly in education. We need to pause and ask ourselves, how can we continue in education like nothing changed? A lot has changed and is changing even faster. So that means we need to ask ourselves, what is the core goal of education right now? And how do we make sure that our students are flourishing at the highest levels in education? These are some things that we'll discuss more as we go on. But I'm going to share the mathematics book and the framework that I created 10 years ago. You know, I'm glad that I created it 10 years ago because it shows that the need for change was necessary years ago. It didn't just come because of AI, right? Because I think there's some AI skeptics that will say, oh, AI is a fad. It will come and go away. So let's carry on with the way we were educating. But is the way that we were educating the best way to be educating? That's the key question. And you can feel free to put your thoughts in the chat on this one. And then we'll go back. I'll put the math book on the screen. So is the way that we were educating students the best way to educate them before AI came? The answer is no. Okay, so what was our plan to fix our problem before this era happened? Let me give you a practical example. Do you know that in mathematics, getting a 95% is not good enough? Getting a 95% in mathematics, actually, getting a 99.9% is not good enough in mathematics if you don't know why you failed or what you got wrong in the 0.1%. My point is, I'm not saying students will always get 100% on everything all the time, but why did you get it wrong? That's the question our students need to wrestle with. Why did they get the problem wrong or the aspect of the problem wrong that made them get it wrong? We have to teach our students, I'm speaking in general, I'm not angry at anybody, please. We have to help our students to learn how to think right about mathematics. What does it take to help students to think right about mathematics? That if I get an aspect of a problem wrong, I need to understand why I was wrong so I don't carry that habit over again and do it somewhere else. If I get something wrong, then I need to ask the question, why did I get it wrong? That is a very important aspect of mathematics, knowing why you are wrong. So we have this issue with mathematics where we have students who might think that they're okay because we've promoted them to the next class. But mathematics is the only subject that is actually not based on any grade level. See, countries create grade levels of mathematics because that was the best way we had to do it in the past. But this is not the past. This is an era where anybody can learn anything they want at the pace they want and as far as they want when they want. That is the era we've entered. And I know there are challenges where people don't have constant internet and so on and so forth. But that is going to change. That has to change in order for Africa to be relevant. Constant internet is no longer a luxury. It is actually a necessity if you're going to compete in the AI revolution. It's a complete necessity. And countries that don't do something about their internet, I'm sorry to say, will be left behind. Let me give you a practical example. In Dubai, not only do they have internet, their government was getting everybody the premium or the plus, one or the other, the premium or plus option of AI models. That means everybody has tools, accelerated tools in Dubai. How will a student in Dubai, like how would we put ourselves to compete with a student in Dubai when they have constant light, constant internet, and constant advanced AI models? There's just no way to compete at that point if you don't have those things. So how are we going to solve that? Well, STEM clubs across Africa, one of the challenges we're going to fix, or one of the things we're going to solve, is we're going to use tools to find out why is there no constant electricity. We're going to use first principles thinking. And we have to come up with solutions. One of the words of encouragement I have for educators, especially those in Africa, is this: anything is possible. Anything is possible. Look up the story of Singapore. After this call, please look up the story of Singapore. The story of Singapore is one of the most fascinating stories when it comes to transformation in a nation. The story of Singapore is one of the most fascinating stories when it comes to transformation in any nation. Singapore was a country that was not considered advanced in any way back in the 1940s or 50s. Today, Singapore is literally like the world's most advanced nation. It's the world's nation with one of the fastest internet speeds. It's the world's nation with one of the highest levels of banking and financial enterprise. The biggest airplanes in the world are flying out of Singapore every single day. My people, our story can change. But in our case, our story needs to change differently. It actually needs to change starting with the youth. Our story needs to change starting with the youth. And the reason why that is critical is because we're living in times where we know that the leadership has failed in many settings around Africa. That is not news. Everybody knows that. That is not news. We all know that leadership is a big concern in Africa. The question now becomes, what can the youth do? That is the question. And Africa is one of the only, sort of continents that there's a huge population boom that is happening, right? So then the question becomes, what can we do with the youth to transform the continent? STEM clubs across Africa started as an initiative, right? We have Ogbonna Secondary School as one of the key schools that we started this initiative with. But STEM clubs across Africa is very different because it's not just about STEM clubs. It's about transformation. It's about changing mindsets. I believe that the biggest airplanes in the world can fly out of Africa someday. I believe that the best mathematicians and scientists in the world can come from Africa someday. And some of them already do, but massive numbers of them can come. I believe that Africa can give us the next Isaac Newton, that can give us the next James Clerk Maxwell. But it's going to start with a mindset shift. let me say one more thing, because this is critical to the movement, and then I'll share more with our educators. So remember, I have a website where you can find content that is available to educators called the Teacher Training Institute. Let me send this to the those who are in our STEM clubs. Let's see. Sorry, 1 second. I have a group on WhatsApp. I'm going to send this to them, and then we'll carry on. Sorry, I apologize. Some of them are asking for the link, and then here's the link for today for the training. Okay. Okay. Perfect. So what we need to realize is that anything is possible, but we're going to have to change our mindset. One of the things I'm holding myself to is that when I have conversations with people from Nigeria or other parts of Africa, that if we talk about any challenges in Africa, we must talk about the solutions right after. We must talk about solutions. We have to focus on solutions. That is, I believe, the way forward. And what I think that has happened is that sometimes we talk about the problems, but there's not enough discussion about solutions. We have to discuss solutions. And I'm just going to add a few people on here, so that when we have question and answer, they can give us their insights as well. So in this discussion of how to raise the next generation of innovators and problem solvers, I'm trying to focus on the fact that we have to change our mindset. And one of the key elements of changing our mindset has to do with this realization that AI is changing education, and what you need to win in the age of AI is not simply more information. You need to know how to solve problems. Every student in the STEM clubs across Africa needs to be thinking about, how can I solve problems? And I think that is the critical element of where we're at with the world today. So let me show you the tools for mastering mathematics, and then we'll come back and do some questions and answers. So here's a book I wrote 10 years ago. I wrote this book as a way to solve practical problems back in the day. And let's see, I'm going to open it over here. You should be able to see my screen. It says Tools for Mastering Mathematics. Tools for Mastering Mathematics was written by me and Nathan Josette and I. And our goal with Tools for Mastering Mathematics was to find a way. Well, my goal with the project initially was to find a way to show every student how they can become exceptional at mathematics. And I'm going to share this book with everybody. It's a free resource for anyone now. And let's see. Okay, perfect. So it's a free resource for anyone. I'm going to share the book in our group chat. So everybody should get this book in the group chat. Feel free to download it, and you can start, reviewing it. Tell me what you think about it. But in Tools for Mastering Mathematics, I have a section. I'm going to scroll down to a section, and then I'm going to zoom in. And I want you guys to see what I said 10 years ago. Okay, this is what I said 10 years ago. Give me 1 second. I'm going to... Okay, everyone, please, let's look at this quote from 10 years ago. And I promise I didn't write this yesterday. Look at what the quote says. Let's take a minute to look at the quote. Okay, so here's what the quote says. What students need fundamentally in academics today is not information. They need inspiration and vision. They can get information from the library as well as Google. Once they're inspired and hardworking, the technology and coaching and teaching available will help them excel in whatever they choose to study. With the technology and tools available, teachers can help students master concepts in mathematics like never before. We need to constantly seek ways to get them to care about excelling. Teachers can provide students with the tools they need to have a vision and the necessary inspiration. That is from 2014. One of the reasons why we know it's from 2014 is notice there's no mention of AI. So in 2014, I was crying with begging educators to start thinking about how they can help every student to excel in mathematics. And now I'm going to tell you the ways that I wanted them to do that. Before I do that, I just want to emphasize a few things from this quote. The first thing I want to emphasize is that in 2014, Google and the internet was readily available. I argue in one of the books I'm writing called Expired that modern education actually expired on September 4th, 1998. When Google came out, modern education literally expired because knowledge scarcity became a thing of the past. However, when something expires, it might still be relevant for a few more days, right? But when you, for example, if somebody buys milk from the store in the US and it says the expiration date is November 1st, if they drink that milk November 3rd, right, they'll probably be okay, right? I'm not recommending that people drink expired milk, but I'm using that as an example. But if they tell you they want to drink that milk June 30th of the next year, you're going to tell them stop it. Modern education in knowledge delivery alone expired when Google became available because it removed knowledge scarcity. However, modern education in the age of AI is, I argue, actually toxic. It's toxic because it tells people to learn things the way they learned it back 50 years ago and makes them think they might be okay when they go to get a job. No, our students need to be building things, they need to be solving problems, and that's how they get their place in society in different jobs today. Getting a degree or just learning is no longer sufficient. Is it important to get a degree? Oh, yes, it's still helpful to know things. That's not the issue. The issue is, what else are you building? Are you building a solution for your community? Are you building infrastructure in electricity and water systems? Are you solving practical problems in your community? If the answer to that is no, then I'm sorry to say your education is obsolete. Because the knowledge alone is readily available everywhere. That's not the issue. The issue is, what will you do with the knowledge? And this, for me, is really exciting because what we need to do in modern education is we actually need to raise people to be like Isaac Newton, to be like Michael Faraday, to be like James Clerk Maxwell. That is the way forward to raise the best people in education today, by looking back to the past at the best mathematicians and scientists we've ever had. The way forward is actually to look back. And here's what's crazy. Almost every algorithm or almost every aspect of AI discussion has elements that goes back to the work of Sir Isaac Newton, Gottfried Leibniz, James Clerk Maxwell, and so on. The very reason, or the very fact that AI works, is because of the ancient scientists and mathematicians. Why don't we raise more like them today? Because if we raise them to be like Isaac Newton, like James Clerk Maxwell, not only will they get A's in all their classes, they will literally show up for the exam like they were going to play games. Because they realize that they can derive the equations even if they've forgotten what the actual equation is. Let me give you an example. In mathematics, we talk about something called completing the square. I'm going to put it on the board here. In mathematics, we talk about something called completing the square. Completing the square. Do you know that completing the square and the quadratic formula, right, are connected? If you forget what the quadratic formula is, you can just complete the square. Like, take a polynomial, ax squared, I'm just going to leave it as squared like that, plus bx plus c. You can take that, set it equal to 0, and derive the quadratic formula. One of the things I'm trying to do on this call or this webinar is to try and put an alarm system in everybody listening and every educator in the world. The fall of 2025 was a mistake in education, where any school went back to school thinking everything was just the same as before. The reason is because your students came back to school fully aware that agentic AI and generative AI exist. and we're going to teach like it's 1998. Now, I understand there are people in schools that say, well, we don't have internet, we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have electricity. And that is part of what STEM clubs across Africa needs to fix right away. Everyone who is involved in STEM clubs across Africa needs to be involved with solar panels, needs to be involved with electricity alternatives, needs to be involved with data centers, needs to be involved with internet infrastructure solutions. Everyone needs to be thinking of solutions, and we need to be delivering those solutions. And I'm happy to announce that I'm talking with a few friends of mine, and we are going to build that infrastructure and give it to schools at cost, at least to the first batch of schools at cost. What that means is we're just making sure they get what they need to have the internet supply. This is happening in Abuja, Nigeria. This is a conversation that is ongoing. And once the systems are fully built and deployed, we want to see how other communities can use them as well. Let me tell you guys a story of why this is really bothering me in terms of this idea of limiting our thoughts from solutions. And then I'll go on. Let me go back to, I'm going to remove these notes. And then I want to go back and show you. So I'm going to show you guys in my book how I wrote this section of the book for teachers. This was written for teachers specifically. Notice what it says: short note on techniques and tools for teachers. That is what it was. It was written specifically for teachers. And here's what I said to them. I said, what can we do to help our students enjoy doing mathematics as well as help them master the concepts they're expected to learn? Notice the key word: enjoy doing mathematics. Why does the word enjoy matter? Because when you enjoy doing something, you will do more of it. Right? There are different types of students. When we have students that have a good attitude towards learning mathematics, they will do more of it. I am proposing that there are certain techniques that can help students appreciate mathematics, adjust their attitude, and gain the skills they need to excel in it. That is what I propose. That there are certain techniques that can help students appreciate mathematics. The way to help your students do better in mathematics is to get them to appreciate mathematics. And there are techniques that do the opposite. Do you know that, and you start seeing the techniques now. Do you know that there are schools that have students who have not mastered the fundamentals in mathematics, and they promoted them to next level, and now the students are angry because they are failing because they didn't have the foundation? In the age of AI, there is no rush to push people into the next topic if they haven't mastered the previous topic. There is no rush. Here's why. Because you can actually learn 6 years of math in a year in the age of AI. I'm not speaking theoretically. This is a fact. You can learn 6 years of math. If you give me a student who is in primary 6 right now in any country of the world, by the time, give me 2 years, they will be done with the coursework that they would have learned from 7th grade to 12th grade. How do we do that? We build on mastery. We build on mastery. And I'll show you guys a picture before we go on that as well. So how do we help students to love mathematics? We can inspire them by telling them the things that happened in math history. That is number one. We can inspire students by telling them about the things that happened in math history. Educators on the call, do you know that the only thing at this point that really ought to matter to us is that we are helping our students see why they're learning what they're learning? Because if it's about the content they need to learn, it's all there on Google and on their AI tools. The knowledge is there. We have it on our website, Teachable. We have it on myopenmath.com. All the knowledge is there. What is missing is, can the students see the real world applications, and can they learn the math history? We need to show them math history, and we need to show them the real world applications. Those are non-negotiables in the age of AI. Why? Because AI can give you those details fast. Just look up on AI. Who came up with Fourier transform? Why does Fourier transform exist? Who came up with the quadratic formula? Why is the quadratic formula important? These are questions that we should be talking to with our students, because they know they can get knowledge anywhere. So number one, we have to inspire our students to care by telling them the history of math and the applications of what they're learning. We have tools for this, and I'll share it with you guys as well. That's number one. Number two, we need to give them solid logical content. Solid logical content. And I'm going to log in on my screen and show you solid logical content. Number three, we need to make sure that they have the study skills, because in the age of AI, there's just too much information. Do they have the study skills for gathering that information and putting it in a regular plan or in a daily plan? Number four, we need to do assessments, right? But those assessments are, the reason for the assessments need to be stated. When you give a student an assessment, when I went to school, when we took our exams, if somebody got 70%, what we would do is we say, well done, you got a 70%, you can move on. But that's no longer the case in the age of AI. You have to then go to the next question. Why did you get 70%? Tell me everything about the things you got wrong. As educators, we should tell them what they got wrong, and they should be able to explain to us why they were wrong. See, this is how engineers think. When an engineer builds a rocket and the rocket doesn't work, they need to ask, why did it not work? That is the age we're in. Everybody needs to know why they were wrong on the things that they got wrong. Number five, more discussions and presentations. In the age of AI, you need, now I wrote this in the age of Google. I didn't write this in the age of AI. I wrote this 10 years ago, but this discussion point is key as well. Students need to be given the opportunities to share what they're learning. Maybe they can do a presentation on a mathematician they like, or on a math concept they find fascinating, like the Fibonacci sequence. We should provide students with the tools they need to teach one another. Eventually, we might see them working in groups after school or during lunch. Guys, when your students during lunch are talking about solving practical problems in their communities, when your students during lunch are talking about how to solve math problems that haven't been solved, you know that you are successful. Success is not determined by one person just knowing the answers anymore. Success is we have a team working together to solve practical problems. I believe that I have the answer for Africa now. By God's grace, I think we have the answer. The answer for Africa needs to come from the youth. The answer for Africa needs to come from the youth. Because the youth know how to deploy technology more effectively. The youth need to start getting global jobs, getting revenue, and fixing the problems in their societies. They need to come together and form communities across the continent of Africa and start solving practical problems. Africa cannot wait anymore. And this applies to every other nation that is having challenges with their education or with infrastructure. If you have young people that have access to AI tools and have access to mentors and a global partnership and access to jobs, we are actually creating a website that will provide 16 to 18-year-olds with jobs. Imagine if 16 to 18-year-olds get jobs in cybersecurity, cloud computing, AI app development, AI engineering, machine learning, robotics. Imagine we start getting 16 to 18-year-olds in Africa that are getting jobs around the world and are solving practical problems in their communities because they are earning money equivalent to what their counterparts who have college degrees are getting in other countries. STEM clubs across Africa, we need to transform the continent. And the way we do that is by equipping the youth. And the way we do that is by equipping them in the after-school clubs. The way we do that is by teaching them how to collaborate with one another. Back in the day, I think about, this was something that occurred to me this week. You know, we have this mindset in Africa sometimes where it's like, this is my work. I'm not going to show you my work. I'm going to hide my work. Let me say this and then I'll put the video back and then I'll show you our website and then we'll wrap up for the day. The era of hiding your work all the time from everybody is no longer relevant. Now, in exams, of course, you shouldn't cheat. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is there are times where you need to collaborate with your classmates. And that collaboration might just create solutions for the continent. One of the goals for STEM clubs across Africa is that in the next 5 to 7 years, there is constant electricity for everyone who needs it. There is water, clean water for everybody, and there's access to high quality healthcare. In the next 7 years, God willing. In the time that Elon Musk is trying to go to Mars, we're going to fix Africa. Because if he's trying to build a whole colony on another planet, then nobody in the world should tell me that we can't have clean water and electricity. Nobody should tell me that. Here's why. Because the youth are about to take charge. The youth connected to a global economy. I'm not talking about the youth waiting on the government. No. That's no longer the case here. In STEM clubs across Africa, we are equipping the youth and connecting them to the global economy. We're connecting them to Singapore, to England, to Japan, to America, to Canada. We're connecting them to solve practical problems. Let me end with these two things I wrote for the teachers. Number one, the idea of holidays being connected to your learning is no longer relevant. In the age of AI, you have knowledge and tools all the time. So why do we have summer break anymore as tied to education? Well, what does that have to do with anything? Instead, you should be focused on daily and weekly renewal. What that means is that you take off one, maybe on Saturdays or on Sundays, you take the day off. That's wonderful. But you need to learn year round. There's nothing like, oh, it's summer break. Why does summer break exist? Because the teachers had to work and then take the break, or because people had to farm, or whatever reason we want to give. But in the age of AI, that's irrelevant. Because you have all the tools you need. So your knowledge delivery is different. It goes back to what is your vision for your life. That's what I'm saying we need to tell our students. What is your vision for your life? Because if I want to be an AI app developer and my school is done for the year, I'm going to keep working all summer because I need to build the app. And then number 7, we need to keep reviewing year round. Review days during the school year, review days year round. The key to excelling in inspiring students is finding the balance and knowing what to adjust or when to adjust each of the tools I mentioned above. When is it okay to spend more time on tests? When is it okay to spend more time on talking about study skills? When is it okay to talk more about math history? When you notice that your students are not doing their assigned work, it might be a good time to teach them how to schedule time and how to follow through on their assignments. Let me stop sharing for a second and let me mention a couple of things. I am not angry at anyone, and I've said it before, but I think some people might think Amos is angry. I'm not angry. I'm very concerned when we have an education system that is expired trying to function in the age of AI. It's just not going to work. So I'm concerned that schools are not preparing students for the world that the students are about to enter. A world that has humanoid robotics being brought online. A world that has space tourism being discussed. A world that has AI being infused in every aspect of research. And our students don't know how to use AI responsibly. And our education system has not caught on. That is what concerns me. Now, I did say that I was going to show you a picture here. I'm going to show us a screen of the math content. Remember, I said we have all the content. So let me show us the content. And then we'll have some time for some Q&A. I'll take a few minutes here. I'm just going to log into the content, and I'm going to show you what students will see. Okay, so here's what students will see. Okay, so learning and... okay, so educators, let's put it in student. Let me share my screen. Everybody who's a part of our program for STEM clubs across Africa or Counting to Calculus automatically gets access to this. This is called My Open Math. There's a reason why this was created. We could talk about the reason later. But the guy who created it, someone created the infrastructure, and then we built in our curriculum framework within it. Our program is called Counting to Calculus. It is the world's most comprehensive plan from counting to calculus. We literally removed duplication, and we made it so students can go from no knowledge of math to calculus in 1 year. In 1 year, you can take somebody who is 12 years old to calculus. In 1 year, that's what we did. So here's what that does. They have a diagnostic test. So first of all the students should use the course ID and the enrollment key, which I'll provide in the group chat. You get a course ID and an enrollment key. You get access to textbooks. You get access to different resources. This is the diagnostic test 1. When you click on the diagnostic test 1, you will notice that it has a question, right? Like this question: what is 16 over x is equal to 4 over 5? If a student gets this wrong, Do you know that it tells me exactly, each of these topics are tied to a specific topic? So, for example, number 1 was proportions. Number 2 has to do with mixed fractions. Number 3 has to do with improper fractions. Number 4 has to do with multiplying fractions. Every topic has a specific label so that when they get a question wrong, when I look at the diagnostic results later on, I know exactly why that student is struggling in math. Exactly why they're struggling. We don't have to do guesswork. We know if somebody gets number 6 wrong, I'm going to say, or here's the other thing, if they take longer than 1 minute to do number 6, it tells me that that student has not mastered it enough to be able to do it like they know their name. Students need to learn concepts and master them like they know their name. That's what I tell them. If a student cannot teach you something back, they have not mastered the concept. And in the age of AI, mastery is a necessity. Mastery is not a luxury, it's a necessity in the age of AI. Not only is it a necessity, the tools are available for mastery. So why are people not mastering the concepts? Let me give you a quick example with Claude. I'm going to pull up Claude here. If my Claude is not logged, okay, give me 5 examples of polynomial addition. Enter. While Claude is working, I'm moving all my operations away from ChatGPT. But I want to just show you guys something with ChatGPT. I'm moving to Claude. Everybody has to decide what AI agent they're using. I'm using Claude, but I want to show you this from ChatGPT because everybody in STEM clubs across Africa also gets access to any GPTs that I build. This is a GPT that I started building a few months ago called Counter to Calculus. And in the GPT, I get to choose what questions I want asked right away. But then here's the thing. You can ask, how do I go from algebra to how do I learn mathematics from first grade math and counting to calculus? Okay, look at what is going to happen. I'm going to ask the GPT I built to answer that question. Okay, while it's answering that question, we're going to go back to Claude. Remember what we asked Claude? We asked Claude to tell us 5 examples. Guys, look at these examples. Look at that. So Claude gives 5 examples, right? Now, I recommend that every student that uses AI for academic support needs to have a human tutor as well. And that's part of why we're doing the Counter to Calculus tutor training, because we're getting ready for what's going to happen. Something is going to happen. Educators are going to realize that the current education system is no longer relevant or useful to meet the needs of AI, and they need a new model, which is AI native. And by that time, we need to have maybe 1 million tutors that have been trained so that they can handle the weight of the shift in education. Look at what AI did. It gave us 5 examples, right? I can also ask to give me 5 practice problems. Why am I bringing this up? Because I can get as many examples as I want. I can get 100 examples. Why is this important? Because when we were younger, we couldn't just get examples made for us indefinitely. My heart cry on today's call is to say, we need to stop operating AI, like we need to stop operating our schools and our education institutions as though technology doesn't exist. But we also need to be careful not to make technology become the crutch that students lean on to do everything for them without learning how to think for themselves. So I have come up with a new model for education in the AI revolution, which is called doubling the standard and raising the bar high. I am saying because people have availability to technologies, we need to start doing calculus in 9th or 10th grade. That is in JSS 3 or SS1 in Nigeria. I am saying we move all our curriculum down so that students in primary 6 are finishing JS 1 to 3 mathematics. Students in JSS 1 to 2 are finishing all of the JS 1 to SS3 mathematics. How is that possible? Because if you give them AI, you've given them the sharpest invention the man has ever made. So you can't be asking them the same questions you were asking them before. Okay, back to our GPT. So in my GPT, I uploaded documents that guides the answers. So it says to learn mathematics from first grade, counting all the way to calculus, the Counting to Calculus program provides a comprehensive mastery-based path. This is the pathway that anybody can use to become very good at mathematics. And notice that I integrated the history of mathematics. This is the guy who came up with algebra. This is the guy who's called the father of geometry. This is the guy who's called one of the first natural philosophers of a sort. And then it guides them through, right? But in Counting to Calculus, we also teach linear algebra, discrete math, physics, and chemistry. Why? Because Newton, the father or the co-founder of calculus, was also the inventor, one of the key inventors of physics. Do you see that Counting to Calculus is not just helping you finish things faster, it's raising the bar. We're teaching Calc 1, 2, and 3 to students in high school. We're teaching linear algebra to high schoolers. We're teaching discrete math, physics, chemistry, data science, machine learning, Fourier transform, quantum theory, and relativity. This is all for high school. It says college and beyond, but we teach it in high school. So we give students the tools, and then they need to defend what they're learning. Can they explain it? They need to do something with what they're learning. They need to build projects. Now, here's where my GPT helps me, is that at the end of my GPT, it actually tells you that you can watch my lessons on YouTube, you can go to my website, you can buy my books on Amazon. So that's what happens with the GPT. As far as the Amazon, this is a Counting to Calculus series, just so everybody's aware. I'm not saying that people have to go and buy this now. I'm saying this is something that you should be aware of, that your students that use Counting to Calculus will get the different workbooks that guide them page by page for what they're learning. They need to learn page by page. So basically what I've done is I've provided them a page to write notes on the concepts they're learning. Notice that chemistry and physics are in the Counting to Calculus series. That's intentional. Economics is in the Counting to Calculus series. Statistics, linear algebra, discrete mathematics, calculus 2, calculus 3, differential equations, and then data science. All students in high school right now should be completing all of this. Like, there is no reason why this should not be the case. And then our course, we also have a course that I've presented, finish 5 years of math in 1 year with Counting to Calculus. You've heard of accelerated computing. Now let's talk about accelerated mathematics. These are some of the testimonials of my students through the years, but let me go down to the pricing options. Notice that there's one called free. And I know this is live, so some people will want to use that option. You know what? That's fine for those who want to use that option to get a taste of some of the strategies we use to teach. But if they want to tutoring, that's where we connect them to tutors through Counting to Calculus. We have small group tutoring, one-on-one tutoring, and then these are, you can see how it's laid out in this option, where students are getting the videos, they're getting the content. Remember, and that's why on today's lesson, I didn't go into detail trying to solve math problems as much. A lot of you on the call are math instructors yourselves. My point is, can we show students everything they need? They have what they need. Let them go at the pace of mastery. I will share the link to this GPT so that you guys can use it as well. But that is where I'm going to stop our presentation for today. Give me 1 second. I'm going to stop sharing. And we're going to open it up for questions as we wrap up for the day. Questions, thoughts, comments, objections.